The space station Aurora 7 floated like a silver jewel in the darkness of space. It was one of the busiest trade hubs in the galaxy. Ships from dozens of planets came and went every day, carrying food, rare goods, technology, and secrets. Inside the station, there was a famous restaurant called La Stella Italiana. It was decorated with soft golden lights, round wooden tables, and large windows that showed a perfect view of the stars. The most important people in the colonies came there when they wanted to eat well and talk in private. Among the many waiters and cooks, there was a shy young woman named Elena Rossi. She was small, quiet, and always polite. She never spoke loudly. She carried plates carefully, like each one was made of glass, even when it was not. Most customers never remembered her face because she never drew attention to herself. But she saw everything. She heard things too. People often forgot that a silent waitress was still listening. That evening, something special was happening. Elena could feel it in the air. The restaurant was busier than usual. The other waiters whispered nervously in the kitchen. Even the manager was wearing his best suit. A very important guest was coming. His name was Don Ricardo Vanetti. People called him the Silver Fox because of his sharp gray hair and calm, cold smile. He was the most powerful man in the outer colony's black market. Everyone feared him, but no one dared to say it out loud. He controlled trade routes, secret deals, and quiet agreements that kept the colony moving. He was rich, respected, and dangerous. At least that was what people believed. When Ricardo entered the restaurant, everything became quiet. The soft music kept playing, but every person turned to look at him. He was tall, elegant, wearing a perfectly tailored dark coat. 2 guards followed behind him, scanning the room with careful eyes. The manager rushed forward to greet him. "Don Ricardo, what an honor. Your private table is ready." Ricardo gave a polite nod and sat near the big window, where stars sparkled like tiny candles in the night. Elena, who had been standing near the bar, lowered her eyes and slowly walked toward the table with a small notepad in her hand. She was nervous. She had served many people before, but never someone like him. "Welcome to La Stella Italiana," she said softly, almost like a whisper. Ricardo tilted his head slightly, noticing her voice. "Thank you," he replied in a smooth tone. "I heard this place has the best wine in the colonies. I'd like to try your most expensive bottle." Elena froze for half a second. She knew exactly which bottle he meant. It was a special wine, old, rare, and imported directly from Earth. The manager kept it locked in a cold room, and only opened it for people who paid a fortune. But Elena also knew something else. 2 days earlier, she had been cleaning the storage area when she noticed something strange. One of the new wine bottles was glowing faintly. At first, she thought it was a reflection from a nearby light. But when she turned off the lights, the bottle still pulsed softly, like it had a heartbeat. She felt cold fear run down her spine. She knew what that meant. When Elena was a student on Earth, before she came to Aurora 7, she had worked as a laboratory assistant. Her research team studied tiny machines called nanites, microscopic robots that could hide in liquids and respond to coded signals. They were powerful but dangerous. After an accident in the lab, Elena left everything behind and disappeared into space. She became a waitress because it was simple, quiet, and safe. She never wanted to see those machines again, but now, one of those bottles was glowing. She tried to tell the manager, but he laughed at her and said, "It's probably just a reflection. Don't worry about it." Rich people love these kinds of fancy details. But Elena couldn't forget what she had seen. She walked carefully to the back room as Ricardo waited for his drink. The bottle sat on the shelf like a sleeping animal. Even in the cool darkness, the faint light inside it was alive. It was too smooth, too regular to be natural. She carried it back to the table on a silver tray, her hands shaking slightly. Everyone in the restaurant was watching. Ricardo leaned back in his chair, looking amused. Elena set the tray down gently. Her heart was beating loudly in her chest. She knew what could happen if he drank it. Nanites like these were not meant for good. They could control, weaken, or spread through the body quietly. Someone had sent this wine for a reason. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her throat was dry. She wanted to stay quiet like always. She wanted to let someone else handle it. But she remembered something her father once told her on Earth. Silence protects no one if danger is real. She took a deep breath. "Don't drink that," she whispered. The sound was so soft that only Ricardo and his nearest guard heard it. The guard blinked in confusion. Ricardo raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. No one ever spoke to him like that, especially not a waitress. What did you say? Ricardo asked, not in anger, but with curiosity. Elena's hands clenched the tray. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. Please, I don't drink it. There's something wrong with the wine. The guard laughed softly, but Ricardo did not. He leaned forward, studying Elena's face carefully. She wasn't joking. Her fear was real. Explain, he said simply. Elena swallowed. The bottle glows. It shouldn't. It's not just wine inside. I used to work in a lab on Earth. I've seen this before. There are tiny machines inside, hidden. Someone put them there. The guard shook his head. She's just a waitress, he muttered. She's scared of shadows. But Ricardo raised a hand to silence him. His eyes never left Elena's face. Bring me a scanner, he said calmly. The manager rushed over, nervous and sweating. Is there a problem, Don Ricardo? He asked quickly. Ricardo ignored him. The guard returned with a small hand scanner, the kind used to check goods for illegal substances. Ricardo placed the device on the table and aimed it at the bottle. A soft blue light swept across the glass. A second later, the scanner beeped and flashed a red warning. The manager gasped. The guard's smile disappeared. Ricardo tilted his head slightly and smiled. Not a warm smile, but a sharp, thoughtful one. Well, well, he said softly. It seems the young lady is not lying. The scanner showed a clear pattern. Microscopic nanite clusters inside the liquid, perfectly hidden but active. They were arranged in a spiral, like a sleeping code waiting to be woken up. Elena felt a strange mix of fear and relief. She was right. She wasn't crazy. The manager tried to explain nervously. I don't understand. It came from the main supply. I checked the numbers myself. It's from Earth? Ricardo waved a hand to silence him. Earth, he repeated slowly. That makes it even more interesting. Elena took a small step back, but Ricardo turned his gaze to her again. You knew what this was, he said, almost like a statement. She nodded slowly. Yes. And yet, you warned me. Her hands shook, but she stood straight. Because it's wrong. For a long moment, Ricardo said nothing. Then he leaned back in his chair again, as if watching an invisible puzzle unfold in front of him. He was not angry. He was intrigued. Most people would have stayed quiet, he said at last. You didn't? Elena didn't know how to respond. She had never wanted to stand out. But now the entire restaurant was staring at her like she had just stepped onto a stage she never asked for. Before Ricardo could say anything else, the lights in the restaurant flickered. The hum of the station changed. It was subtle, but Elena felt it. Something else was happening. Then her small personal communicator buzzed against her apron. A message flashed across the tiny screen. Shipment moved. All bottles missing. Dock 7, her heart dropped. The glowing bottle on the table was only one of many. Whoever had sent it had already taken the others. Ricardo noticed the change in her face. What is it? He asked sharply. Elena didn't hesitate now. This isn't the only one, she whispered. They're moving the rest. Someone wants to use them. The restaurant filled with low murmurs as people felt the tension rise. Ricardo tapped a finger against the table slowly. He wasn't a man who liked surprises, but he liked puzzles even less. Elena knew she had just stepped into something far bigger than her quiet life as a waitress. She had warned a powerful man, and now the secret she had tried to run from was waking up again, in the worst possible way. Ricardo looked out the window into the dark star field. His smile was thin but steady. Then, Miss Rossi, he said softly, I believe you and I have a very serious problem to solve. The quiet restaurant, once full of warm lights and soft music, now felt like the center of a storm. Elena's hands were still shaking, but something inside her had changed. For the first time in years, she wasn't hiding. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing. She couldn't walk away now. To be continued. The restaurant La Stella Italiana had never felt this quiet before. A few minutes ago, it was full of soft music, shining glasses, and warm smiles. Now the air felt heavy, almost electric. Elena Rossi stood near the table, her hands still trembling slightly. She had just told Don Riccardo Vanetti the truth about the glowing wine bottle. The bottle was not just expensive, it was dangerous. And now the rest of the shipment was missing. Ricardo leaned back in his chair, calm but sharp. His silver hair glimmered under the golden lights. He tapped his finger gently against the table, a sound that echoed louder than it should have in the silence. "Elena Rossi," he said softly, "you have just saved my life, but it seems this story is bigger than one bottle." Elena felt her heart beating fast. Yes, there are more bottles. They're moving them now, to Dock 7. One of Ricardo's guards spoke. "Boss, should we call security?" Ricardo gave a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No, security is slow. Whoever did this is smart. We'll have to be smarter." He stood up, and the entire restaurant seemed to straighten with him. He wasn't just a man. He was a presence. Elena felt small next to him, but she also felt something else, like she was part of something important now. "Miss Rossi," Ricardo said, turning to her, "you said you worked in a lab on Earth. You know what's inside these bottles, correct?" Elena nodded slowly. "Yes, I know what nanites can do." Then he said, "I need your help." Elena blinked in surprise. "My help?" Ricardo's calm eyes met hers. "You're the only one here who understands this kind of danger. My people know how to protect things, but we don't understand what's inside those bottles. You do." Elena had never been part of anything like this. She was a waitress now, not a scientist. She wanted a quiet life, but she also knew the truth. Those bottles were dangerous. If they reached the wrong hands, a lot of people could be hurt. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, I'll help." Ricardo's smile returned, softer this time. "Good." A hidden plan, they moved quickly. Ricardo and his 2 guards guided Elena out through the back door of the restaurant. The space station's main corridor was quieter now. Lights glowed softly above them, and the distant hum of ships echoed like a heartbeat. Elena led them to the service elevator that went straight to the lower docks. She knew the station well. She walked these halls every day on her way to work. But tonight everything felt different. The air felt colder. The sound of their footsteps seemed louder. Inside the elevator, Ricardo stood tall with his hands behind his back. He looked calm, but Elena could tell his mind was working fast. He wasn't a man who liked to be surprised, especially not by hidden enemies. "Tell me," Ricardo said quietly. "How do these nanites work?" Elena explained slowly. "They are tiny machines. You can't see them with your eyes. They can travel through liquids. When someone drinks the wine, the nanites enter the body quietly. Then someone can send a special signal to control them. They can make people weak. They can also control their thoughts in small ways." Ricardo raised an eyebrow. "Control their thoughts?" Elena nodded. "Yes, not like a puppet, but enough to make someone trust the wrong person. Enough to make someone follow orders without knowing why." Ricardo was silent for a moment. "That's clever. It's dangerous," Elena said softly. "These were made for secret missions. I worked in the lab that tested them, but the project was shut down because it was too risky." The elevator stopped with a soft sound. The doors opened and the cool air of Dock 7 rushed in. The lower docks were always a little colder than the rest of the station. Cargo crates stood in long rows and the lights were dim. Only a few workers moved around, pushing carts and scanning packages. Elena looked around carefully. They were here. The message said so. Ricardo gave a signal to his guards, who moved forward quietly. Elena followed behind, her heart beating fast. She had never done anything like this before. But something inside her, something brave and steady, kept her moving. The shipment at the far end of the dock, they saw it. A large silver cargo container with a red Earth logo. 2 workers were scanning it with small tablets. A third person, dressed in a dark coat, stood near the control panel of a small ship. Elena's breath caught. That ship was getting ready to leave, and inside that container she knew were the glowing bottles. "That's them," she whispered. Ricardo nodded slowly. He looked at Elena, not like a waitress, but like a trusted ally now. "Then we stopped them." One of the guards whispered, "Boss, we can block the door." "No," Ricardo said calmly. "Blocking won't stop the ship. It will only make them rush. We need to be smart." He turned to Elena. "Can these nanites be stopped without breaking the bottles?" Elena thought for a moment. "Yes, there's a signal. If I send a certain pulse, the nanites will sleep. They'll stop working, but I need access to the cargo control panel." Ricardo smiled slightly. "Then we'll get you to that panel." Elena felt a small spark of courage grow inside her chest. For years she had hidden her knowledge because she was afraid. But now that knowledge could protect everyone on the station. The clever move. They moved closer, staying in the shadows between the cargo stacks. Elena followed Ricardo's lead. He moved like someone who had done this many times before. Quiet, smooth, sure of himself. When they were close enough, Ricardo leaned down slightly toward Elena. "Now, Miss Rossi, can you do it?" Elena nodded even though her hands were shaking. She slipped quietly toward the control panel. The man in the dark coat was focused on his tablet, giving her just enough time. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Years ago, she had worked with these systems. She remembered their codes, their patterns. Behind her, Ricardo gave a small hand signal. His guards positioned themselves near the exit doors, ready to close them if needed. Elena found the signal menu. Her heart pounded in her ears. She typed in the pulse frequency she remembered, the one that could shut the nanites down without harming anyone. The dark-coated man finally noticed her. "Hey," he said, surprised. But before he could reach her, Elena pressed send. A soft vibration filled the air. The cargo container glowed faintly, just like the bottle in the restaurant had. Then the glow faded completely. The nanites had gone still, asleep. Elena stepped back, breathing fast. "It worked," she whispered. Ricardo walked forward slowly. His expression was calm, but there was a sharp light in his eyes, the look of a man who had just seen a dangerous plan fall apart. The man in the coat tried to look confident, but he was clearly surprised. Ricardo gave him a cool, steady look. "Leaving so soon?" he asked softly. The man didn't answer. He just lowered his head. He knew it was over. Truth and Power Security arrived a few minutes later, alerted by Ricardo's quiet call. They took the container and the man away. The bottles would be tested and locked safely in the station's secure lab. Elena stood near the now quiet ship, the cold air brushing her cheeks. She felt tired, but in a good way. She had done something she never thought she could. She had faced danger not by force, but by knowledge. Ricardo walked up beside her. "You did well," he said simply. Elena looked up at him. "I just did what I had to do." Ricardo gave a soft laugh. "That's what heroes always say." She shook her head quickly. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a waitress." Ricardo's eyes softened, something rare for a man like him. "No, Miss Rossi, you are not just anything. You saw something dangerous. You spoke when others would have stayed silent. And you saved many lives tonight. That's not just anything." Elena didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. They walked slowly back toward the elevator. The dock behind them was busy now, full of security workers and glowing scanners. The danger was over, at least for tonight. A new beginning. The next morning, the restaurant looked exactly the same as always. Golden lights, soft music, round wooden tables, and windows showing the endless stars. But to Elena, everything felt different. She wasn't just a silent shadow moving between tables anymore. She had stood up, spoken the truth, and made a difference. When she entered the restaurant, the manager gave her a strange look, half surprise, half respect. The other waiters whispered to each other, but no one dared to ask her what had happened. She liked it that way. Later that evening, Ricardo returned. This time there was no large entrance, no whispers. He came alone and sat at his usual table. When Elena walked over, he smiled in that calm, sharp way of his. "Miss Rossi," he said, "today I will not ask for the special wine. I will ask for coffee." Elena smiled shyly. "That's probably safer." They both laughed softly. For a moment, the world didn't feel as dangerous. As she brought him his coffee, Ricardo leaned closer. "You know," he said, "a person with your kind of mind shouldn't spend her life carrying trays." Elena blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he continued, "you could help make sure things like this never happen again. People trust me. I trust few people, but I trust you now." Elena felt warmth spread through her chest. No one had ever said that to her. She didn't know what her future would be, but she knew it wouldn't be silent anymore.